Hello. Now let's discuss about booleans, how to implement the booleans or how boolean works with the custom classes, right? We already know the boolean of the truth, like we already know that all the empty containers or all the sequence data uh, with the with the zero length, that boolean value should be considered as false, right? And all the value except zero, right, all the containers with the length which is greater than 0 is considered as a boolean, as a true, right? So the way Python determine the true value for our custom class is, first we try to look for the implementation of the boolean method, right? And the boolean method needs to return the boolean type. It needs to return the true and the false, right? And then if not present, then it will look for the length function which return false if 0, otherwise it return true. So if the len function has implemented and if the value is 0, it will return false, otherwise it will return true. Otherwise it will return true always. Now let's look each behavior one by one. So here let's first define a class without any len and the boolean function. So we have implemented a class called person. We have created the object. When we check the boolean of object, will get true, because this is what it says, right? We have not implemented len and the boolean, it returns true. Now let's implement the len method. Now here in the my list we have the length, right? Now this len method simply return what is the length, right? So let's see this. Here we creating the list with the length as 0 and L1 and L2 with the length of 10. Now let's see this. When we check the boolean of L1, when we do this, it will say, basically it will, because this length returns the 0 over here, so this length return the direct value. But remember, here we are calling the boolean and this boolean has not implemented in this. So if boolean is not present, so it will call the len functions, right? Now let's see that. And when we do this, we can see that the length has been called here, though we are calling the boolean functions. Now it is indirectly it is calling the len function. When we check the, again the output is false. When we see the boolean of L2, it says the output is true, right? Now, when we create a custom class, as long as we have the length method implemented, we can skip the boolean method directly, right? But let's implement the boolean method, right? And let's see that whether it is being called or not, like whether this length has been called or not with the boolean present, right? So here we have this my list, again the same class, but this time we have the length as well as the boolean method. So boolean method says that if the length is greater than 0, it is true, otherwise it is false, right? So let's see this. So this returns the boolean output. Now here we have the two object. When we call the boolean, now we see that now the boolean is being called. Earlier the length was being called if the boolean was not present. When we check the boolean of p2, we can see that the boolean method is being called. So for the class that do not define the boolean, right, we may want to use the boolean method, right? So if that length has not been defined, so boolean method is being used. Now, for example, consider that we have this 2D point class, right, where we want to consider the origin 0, 0 is false and everything is true. Now, in this case, we do not have the Boolean requirement, so we can implement we do not have the length requirement, so we can implement the Boolean method. So by default, all the instance of the point will be true, right? So here, if we'll have this point, now we are not implementing length and the Boolean for now. When we check the two object, when we check the boolean of the both object, both are true. Now let's implement the boolean now. In the boolean, it is saying that if x is not equal to 0 or y is not equal to 0, right? We have this or operator in between. When we do this, when we check the, here we're getting the two object. When we check the boolean of p1, we're getting false. Boolean of p2, we're getting true, right? So now we know the boolean is being used over here, right? Now we could technically do something like that, right? So instead of saying not equal to or equal to, we are comparing. We can simply call p1 or p, like we can simply call x or y, right? If both belongs to, if x is 0 and y is 0, So 0 or 0 will be 0, which is a false, right? We can simply check the boolean of 0, which is false, right? So we can simply use this. So here we are removing the operator, and now we are simply using the OR operator between two values, right? And now remember, we have seen that, we have discussed that the Boolean method needs to implement the Boolean output, right? But this is not giving the Boolean output anymore. When we do this, we have the two object, right? Now let's call that directly the Boolean method, right? Here we are getting true and false because this, whatever the output we are getting, we are converting to a Boolean. But now let's try the Boolean of the object. Here, when we try the Boolean of the object, we say that it returns it, this should return the boolean, but it is returning the integer, right? So this boolean is returning the integer object, not the boolean object. So you can convert this, you can simply call whatever the value we are getting with the OR operator, we can simply convert it or pass this to the boolean functions, and now this is returning the boolean out. We have the two object. We are trying to check the boolean of both object. Now we can see that, right? So now we know how the boolean works with the custom classes, right? And yeah, this is it. Thank you very much.